Welcome to the What to Expect While Fostering and Adopting podcast show. If you're a foster mom, on the journey to adoption, already adopted, or somewhere in the middle, trying to figure out how to navigate the foster care system, wanting to grow your family through adoption, trying to balance everything, or stuck in that space of all things unknown, you're in the right place. What if there was a way to fast track your knowledge, prepare you for the good and the hard, and somebody who could answer that long list of questions I know you have? Hi friend, I'm Christine Marie, biblical mindset coach, adoptive mom, and previous foster parent of 77 children. Yep, you heard that right, 77 kiddos. I'm your host, and my goal is to help make your journey a lot easier by sharing my best tools, techniques, and skills that helped me pivot from foster care to adoption, fully surrender, and trust the process. I'm about to bring some calm to the chaos and show you how to navigate through this journey with a whole lot of grace. So go grab your cup of coffee and let's jump in. I'm so excited. Today is a very exciting episode. I'm super excited because I'm going to be introducing to you somebody who also hosts another foster parent podcast. You guys, it's like two foster parent podcasts collided, and this was what happened. So I'm super excited about that. And if you guys do not subscribe to her podcast, I'm going to share all the information for that right now because you need to go listen. I don't feel like there can be enough information out there when you are a foster parent. So like the more, the merrier. There is no lack mindset here at all. But I want to introduce you today to Nicole Barlow. She is an adoptive mom. She has 6 kids, you guys, and we're going to jump into her journey. She is a TBRI practitioner, a wellness coach, and her podcast. Write this down. Take a mental note. I will put it in the show notes so you can go click subscribe and follow her. It is Foster Parent Well. You guys, I have been following her myself, and so I think it's super fun. It's such a unique opportunity to have her here on the show. So, Nicole, welcome.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So share with us your story. Tell us all the details. How did you get started with the foster care, adoptive, all those things?
Yeah, so the way that we got into foster care is I was helping with an after-school Bible club with my church, volunteering for an after-school Bible club, and there was a foster kid that joined my group. And I went home. We had one biological son at the time that was 10, and I went home and I told my husband, I'm like, I think we should get into foster care. And he was like, no. I was like, okay. But we really were digging into how do we disciple our son well? Like, how do we lead him well? And the Lord kept bringing up stuff in his word that was about caring for the least of these and sacrificing for others. And it just kept coming up and coming up and coming up. So eventually my husband agreed to do foster care, and we jumped in and realized very, very quickly that it was our passion. Like, this was what the Lord wanted us to do. This is where he wanted us in that season. And then we quickly, within 24 hours, after we were approved, got placed with 2 boys. At the time, they were 2 months and 4.5. And we had those boys for 2.5 years before they ended up going back to their biological family. And we still have contact with them. It's been a great relationship. We did some respite care. We did some additional placements and stuff. But then we got a call for an adoptive placement for a sibling group of 5.
Oh my goodness. That's not a normal call to get.
No, it's not a normal
I just want people to know, like, that's like a needle in a haystack call.
Yes. Well, and we had done respite. Part of the reason we got the call for them is because we had done respite for some of the younger kids. So we had kept a couple of the younger kids for their foster parent, but their foster parent wasn't an adoptive resource. And so when it came time for them to need an adoptive resource, they were looking amongst the people that already had relationship with them. So since we already had that relationship, they called and said, hey, would you be willing to do this? And I really expected my husband to say, No, absolutely not. I expected my biological son because going through that process, we went through it together. So we talked about it with him. We asked him to have a voice in that process. I really expected him to say no. And they didn't. They both said yes, which I knew was a God thing. And I was like, okay, we were meant to do this. But one of the things that was interesting, we actually were in a rental house at the time. It was a long story, but we sold our house because we decided if we were going to do foster care long term, there was a better setup for a home to be able to handle some of that stuff. We only had 2 bathrooms in our previous house. And we were like, if we're going to have boys and girls in this home, it would be nice to have an extra bathroom and all that. So in
Right.
between placements, we put our house up for sale, sold the house right away. But while it was under contract and we had another contract on another house, my husband lost his job.
Oh gosh.
And so we were like, okay, now what? And we were really like questioning the Lord, like, Lord, are you saying we shouldn't do foster care anymore? Are you calling us to something else? And really being very prayerful during that time. So we moved into a rental house that was not at all set up for us to really foster because we were just kind of viewing this as the interim to figure out what we were going to do next. And we got this call for the sibling group of 5 while we're in this rental house. And we're like, okay, Lord, well, I guess if you want us to say yes to this, right? Everybody's yeses are on the table. If you want us to say yes to this, you're going to have to make a way. And my husband had already gotten a job and all of that at this point. So we said, okay, you're going to have to find the house for us. He did. There was a house in our same neighborhood that we had moved out of, that we loved, that we had passed this house a million times. Brand new, never been lived in, had been sitting on the market for a year, and it was 7 bedrooms. And we were like, okay, Lord, I guess this is our house. And it wasn't like a massive house or anything. It just the way that it was set up. And we had never looked at it before because who needs 7 bedrooms, right?
Right. You wouldn't even go to look for 7 bedrooms.
We didn't.
Oh.
I mean, we had never even, it was on the street that we were like our ideal street. It was perfectly placed, exactly what we wanted. We just had passed by it a million times because who needs that many bedrooms? Taking in a sibling group of 5, we're like, okay, now we need that many bedrooms. And you don't have to have that many bedrooms to be able to foster that many kids or whatever. But some of our kids had unique situations where they did have to have their own bedrooms. And so we needed, multiple individual spaces for our kids.
Wow. So I don't know about you, but I've read the book of Genesis multiple times.
Yeah.
And I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday, and I was saying, in Genesis 2, the very second part, it tells you that God put gold in the Garden of Eden. Why would he put gold in the Garden of Eden? Like, they didn't have shops, they didn't have grocery stores. Like, they didn't need gold. But
Right.
like, it's just such a reminder that like God provides for us even before we even know that we're going to need provision. Like,
Yep.
and that's
Even
so
before.
yes, and it's so cool that it probably felt like comfortable because the house had 7 bedrooms, but it was where it was located. You said it was in my previous neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, it was everything that we wanted in a house. There was one hiccup with the house, which is why it had sat on the market for a year, because it sat without selling for a year in a very active market. When they had built the house, they built the island in the kitchen a little further away from the cabinets than usual. And so it was kind of odd. And we were like, well, that is kind of odd. It does feel like this part is kind of far away from, the other parts of the kitchen. So we mentioned that to them, and they actually gave us money to fix it. But when we moved in, having that many kids running around in the kitchen, it was nice having that big wide space. And so we didn't change anything. So, even down to those little details,
Right.
everything was already decided. That home was sitting there waiting for us to take ownership. And what looked like a struggle, what looked like a hardship with my husband losing his job was actually a blessing. He was actually looking to bless us in a certain way.
That's so amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
So, what is the age range on your kids? So, you have 6 kids. Are they
6.
close together, far apart?
So I have 2 groups. I have the big kids and the littles, and we call them the littles. Like, when I call them down to breakfast in the morning, I'm like, "Littles." Eventually, I'm gonna have to stop calling them the littles because they're not so little anymore. So but the little kids now are 10, 12 and 12. So one of my girls just turned 12 yesterday, and the other doesn't turn 13 for another month and a half. So for just a short season, I have two 12-year-olds. And then we have a 17-year-old, an 18-year-old, and my biological son is 21. But when we got them, they were 2, 3, 4, 9, and 10. And my biological son was 13 at the time.
Wow, that is so much busyness in
Busy.
house.
Busy. I really don't remember the first couple months. It was just a lot. I do remember telling people my house was like preschool fight club because it was just like madness. Every day we were just trying to make sure that people didn't die.
Oh my goodness. So tell me a little bit about TBRI. I know you're a practitioner. What led you to go into that? If you could explain to the listeners what that is and why it's so important.
Yeah, so we went through Empower to Connect, and my husband and I got trained as what was called then Empower to Connect parent trainers. Now it's called Cultivate Connection. At the time, we went through that process because we really wanted to dig in deeper. Our
Okay.
kids have some pretty severe trauma.
Yeah.
We didn't know what to do. And I had a TBRI parent coach. We had TBRI practitioners as therapists. So those people were kind of pouring into us. I was also training foster parents at the time. I trained for a local agency in our area, potential foster and adoptive parents. And I just really needed to dig in more to be able to equip myself and to be able to equip other parents to be able to handle some more challenging behaviors. Our first couple of placements were very challenging when it came to the case and what went on in the case and the ups and downs of foster care and all of that stuff. But we really didn't see a lot of the behaviors that we did from my kids. And so we needed to dig in a little bit more. So we became Empowered to Connect parent trainers, dug in a little bit then. But as I continued to train foster parents, like I just want more knowledge. I want more tools. I want more resources just to be able to be the best parent that I can be, but also to equip other parents to be the best that they can be. Because I think a lot of people go into foster care thinking, oh, I know how to parent, or I've raised kids, or I understand what parenting looks like. But when kids have experienced extreme neglect, abuse, trauma in their lives, parenting looks very, very different.
I agree. And I think that's something that's so important because, especially if you, as you're going into people who are going into become foster parents for the first time, these aren't like they only remove children from their parents. That's the last resort.
Yeah.
Like there is
Yep.
no other option. The child
Yep.
cannot be safe.
Yep.
They cannot put other parenting plans in place to keep the child safe. Like that's the last resort.
Yes.
So these children have truly been through unimaginable trauma. Even the caseworker doesn't understand, and most of the times the caseworker doesn't understand the full depth of what's happened. And so I feel like, what you hear is like 10%.
Yes.
Just know it's like that iceberg picture where you see the top of the iceberg and
Yes.
it's so much bigger underneath because I mean, if you put yourself in the parent's perspective or in their shoes, they're not going to want to share everything. The
Sure.
child might not remember everything. So you just have to go into it, but just know that these children, there's a lot to kind of unwrap and unpeel. And it's nothing like your biological child having a hard day.
Right. Right. Yeah, it is definitely not that. And for my kids too, it wasn't just their biological home where trauma occurred, but they experienced trauma in foster care. They were in foster care for a long time and experienced some things in foster care. And my little girls, I mean, were moved around from placement to placement. So we are their sixth placement,
Yeah.
and they were 3 and 4. So they had never really lived in any one place for any amount of time. They had no concept of a parent or a family. Like they didn't know those things. That didn't make sense to them. And so you have to understand that when you're taking in kids that have experienced these foundational things, right? Their foundation wasn't laid, then then it looks very different coming in the middle of their story.
Yeah. So how tell us more about TBRI and how that impacts kiddos and or us parents.
Yeah. So TBRI is a whole child trauma informed practice. And what it does is it looks for to meet the needs of the child. It's set on 3 basic foundations. It's empowering, connecting, and then correcting. And a lot of parents want to jump to the correcting. How do I correct their behavior? How do I manage their behavior, right? Because that's what we see. That's what brings chaos and hardship and stuff in our homes. But the thing is those connecting tools don't work if you're not connecting with your child, if you're not empowering them through nutrition and movement and water and rest and all of these things. If you're not meeting those needs in your kids, then you're not going to have the voice to say, this is what you should be doing or this is what you shouldn't be doing. Why would they trust you? They don't even know you. I think it's very, very interesting. God says, if you love me, you will obey my commands. And going back to the fact that the love, the trust, that dependence comes first. If we can't if we don't love God, if we don't trust him, we're not going to do what he says. Unbelievers are not going to do what God says. They're just not. They don't trust that he has their best interest at heart, right? And the
Right.
same is true for our kids. If they don't know us, if they haven't built a relationship with us, if we're not meeting their needs time and time again, they're not going to trust us enough to be able to do what we say.
So important. Well, and I think even if you just look at the 5 basic human needs, these kiddos didn't have those basic needs met.
Yep. Yep.
And so a lot of time they're just in fight or flight, wondering, am I going to eat? When
Yeah.
will it be next?
Yeah.
Am I going to sleep?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, trust that has to be built, even just with the food portion. Especially, I think a lot of foster kiddos have a lot of struggle and emotions around food.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's just so much. And when a child's in fight or flight, they're not misbehaving. They're just acting out of their fear. It's an
Right.
automatic response. It's not something they can control. It's funny, right before this, one of my kids got corrected about something, and it wasn't a big deal. It really wasn't a big deal. She was just being bossy or something. And so was we were talking upstairs about stuff, and she just lost her mind and started screaming bloody murder like she was dying. And she's not dying, but it wasn't misbehavior. She wasn't trying to be rebellious. She wasn't, but something in her brain flipped, right? Her lid flipped. You hear that phrase often. Her lid flipped, and she's not thinking with her upstairs brain. She's thinking out of her survival mode. Like something triggered that in her, and she is reacting out of that. And so my first job is I have to help her calm. Like my job is not to come down on her because she's screaming. My job is to be that parent that helps them calm. If a newborn baby starts screaming because they don't have what they need or whatever, right? And they're trying to get a response, you're not going to chastise that baby for crying, right?
Right.
And a lot of times that's how our kids' brains work. They work more like they're a newborn or a young infant. And so we have to meet them where they were. It wasn't hard. It's very funny actually how I get her to stop. Now, every one of my kids and how I get them to calm down and come to their upstairs brains is a little bit different, but for her, I throw stuff at her. And this is gonna sound like I throw and it's not like I throw objects at her, but like I will throw a paper towel to her. Or today I grabbed a pillow off of her bed and I was just kind of like lightly tossing it to her because what I'm trying to get her to do is to catch it. In order to catch it, she has to come out of that survival brain and stop fixating on whatever's triggering her at the moment. And she has to concentrate on catching that pillow. And so usually it takes 2 or 3 tosses before she starts to clue in and starts to catch the pillow and then throw it back to me. And then we become playful about it. It's very interesting. Play actually disarms that fear response. So if we can create that environment where we're playful with our kids, it helps their brains settle a bit more. So I was tossing her the pillow and then I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna toss it higher," right? And I would toss it a little higher and catch it, or she'd throw it at me and I'd be like, "Whoa, my knees are too old to be bending down like that. You gotta throw it up a little bit." And she starts laughing and completely comes out of whatever was triggering her in that moment. And then when she's calm, we can sit and have a discussion. And I'm like, okay, can we see that this reaction, right, didn't fit what was going on? What's going on is very easy. We're just going to talk about it and work through it, and then it's going to be over. But a lot of times our kids, their lids will flip, and it looks like a lot of parents will say, hey, it's bad behavior or it's manipulation or it's whatever. And it's just their brains are triggered and in that survival mode.
Well, I think you're also the other piece too is like their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed.
Correct.
So not only do you have a child in fight or flight with the lid flipped where they can't even process what's happening because they were triggered, but now we have to remember that their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. I mean, that's like in their 20s.
Yep.
So they're not rationalizing, I shouldn't climb on the roof of the house. And I know this is an extreme example,
Sure.
but you might encounter this as a foster or adoptive parent that they're climbing out their windows, they're on the roof of the house. They just know, I've got to get out. I'm
Yeah.
panicked. I
Yeah.
need to go on the roof. And then they're going, now what? But they're
Right.
still upset
Yep.
and they're in a dangerous situation now. And I know that's so extreme, but it can happen with little kids too. I remember I think he might have been 2 years old at the time. This toddler was super big, like way taller, bigger, and stronger
Yeah.
than like a teenager.
Yep.
And we went in one morning and he was in a crib and he had literally pulled apart, those little metal springs on the bottom,
Yeah.
pulled them apart. And it's just like, those are the things that can happen that these kids
Yep.
are in these dangerous situations because also when you are in fight or flight, they can become stronger.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
can, that fear pulsing through their body and they can put themselves in situations that they don't even know what they're doing.
Yes, absolutely. And it's very scary when you have somebody with a toddler brain, but they have a strength of a grown man in those moments, right? And we've seen it in other scenarios, like when an adult maybe sees somebody trapped under a car, right? And you see they
Right.
just get this super strength where they're able to lift up the car so that somebody can get out from under it because of their adrenaline pumping, because of all of this stuff. And so that survival part is good. But when those hormones are pumping through our kids, it gives them strength, right?
Right.
To where they are able to do things that a toddler shouldn't be able to do.
So, what would be a practical tip, let's say for a foster parent who has a toddler
Yeah.
who is not able to, like you were explaining with your daughter, you could sit down afterwards and have this conversation.
Yeah.
What is a practical tip that they could do to kind of help shift their toddler out of
Fight
the
or
fight or
flight or whatever.
flight? Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, part of it is we need to be able to set up, especially with toddlers, it starts beforehand. So, one, we're doing those connecting activities, but we're also setting safeguards around our toddlers to keep them safe so that they're not able to do things that would be dangerous for them. And sometimes
Right.
it may mean that they have more eyes on them for most of the day, but also like if the coils in a bed are an issue, then you get a bed without that, right? And and so we want to look at what tools can we put in place that kind of help protect and make this a little bit simpler for the parent and the child, that they're not able to get into things that they're not going to be able to handle. And most foster homes have to have so many things locked up and all the things anyway, and that's why, because a lot of our kids are more apt to get into things than a child that is born within the home that doesn't have those same survival instincts or whatever that have been built up. But the other part of it, in order to calm that child, it really depends on the child. Like, even at a toddler stage, I had one that just wanted to be held. And that would help calm that child down. A lot of times you think about an infant. When I hold an infant near, my heart rate, my breathing is going to help that infant calm. And the same is true for our kids. So if we can bring them near, just our heart rate, our breathing can help calm that child. Now, we have to be calm in order for that to work. Because I don't know if you've ever seen like an anxious person pick up a baby, but it
Yes.
doesn't work well because it makes the baby anxious, right?
Right.
So it goes both ways. But if we can hold that child and soothe them, that's our first response. But I have another child that did not want to be touched when they were in fight or flight. That did not go well. And so I had to figure out what are some things that would help them. A drink of water is always helpful. A snack is usually helpful. And a lot of parents will go, but isn't that rewarding the child, right? In this tantrum or whatever. But but when we look at it that right way, we're looking at it the wrong way. This child is not having bad behavior. They're having a hard time. They're in fight or flight. And so our job is to do whatever it takes to get their brain to calm down because we can't teach them anything when they're in fight or flight. Our brains do not learn when they're in fight or flight mode. And so it's important that we get them to calm down before we do anything. And actually, even with older kids, talking when a child is actually in fight or flight doesn't do much because kids hear a maximum of 8 words if they're in fight or flight. So you may be talking lots of stuff to your kids, but they're not really hearing any of it.
That's awesome. Well, I remember one of the kiddos we had a weighted vest.
Yeah.
And so when he was, and then we also had like, it was kind of like a scuba material. So it was a pressure vest.
Yep.
And so based on how he was responding, like there's so many tools out there
Well,
that he actually started to crave his weighted vest
yep.
and like the pressure vest because it just kind of gave him that hug when he didn't want other people to touch him.
Yeah, that's good. Warm water is also a great thing, like a shower or a bath or something if your kids enjoy that. Some kids that triggers them, the bath and showers triggers them. So you wouldn't want to do it with that type of a child. But if they are soothed by water, a lot of times that water can be very calming. And if you stick some Epsom salt or some magnesium in their bath, that can help them, calm down as well.
That's awesome. Well, you're just a wealth of knowledge and definitely I'm so excited because I feel like you and I both cover different things on our podcast.
Yeah.
And so I think they complement each other really well. If you could give the listeners kind of an overview of what you share on your podcast, that would be awesome.
I really share a lot of information about supporting the parent. I feel like there's a lot of information out there and a lot of great resources for parents like yours on how to support your kids and what this should look like when you're supporting your kids. But I really focus on on the parents and how do they support their health? What does self-care look like? I talk about a lot about regulation strategies as a parent. Like, how do we walk through things? I talk about like different thoughts and feelings and emotions and stuff that we go through as parents in this foster care space that sometimes are a little taboo that we may not want to talk about out loud. Maybe your friends that aren't in foster care don't really understand. And so I really like to kind of hash through a lot of that stuff on my podcast so that parents feel like they have support for them. When parents are supported well, when they're taken care of, when they're taking care of themselves, I feel like then they have the tools that they need to really be better parents.
I love that so much. I appreciate you being on the show today and sharing all of the information that you did. And like I said, if you want to connect with Nicole, please go follow her, go subscribe to her podcast. I will put that in the show notes today. But I just want to say thank you so much for being on today's episode. And I'm excited for people to begin connecting with you as well.
Yes, this is awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey friend, I hope that you loved today's episode. I pray it blessed you and helped you see that you have a friend in your corner who truly understands what you're walking through. If so, would you share this episode with someone who's been praying for a breakthrough in their own journey? It would also bless me big time and help others to find this podcast if you would leave a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also submit your questions, topics that you would like covered, and find a community of like-minded mamas in my private Facebook group by searching What to Expect While Fostering and Adopting on Facebook. See you next time.